Hi, I'm Lindsay with Ellie and Max Sewing Patterns. Thanks for joining me today. We're going to be making the Shantelle top and crop top and dress. It's a beautiful flowy woven pattern that I think you're going to love. You're going to need your pattern pieces cut out in apparel fabrics. You can reference the tutorial to have specific examples of fabrics that work well. I suggest lightweight fabrics with a nice drape. Anything that's too structured is going to appear more boxy. So it kind of just depends on what you're going for with your look. You're going to need to have either a 1/4 of an inch elastic for the bodice, or you're going to have elastic thread so that we can do the shearing step. You'll need some bobbins, you'll need some marking pens or chalk, you'll need possibly some pattern weights for when you're drawing your guidelines. You'll need a ruler for that, and you'll need your pattern piece, okay? So let's get started. So I have my bodices and my sleeves. For this, I'm doing the crop. So my sleeve piece is much larger than my bodice pieces. So we're just gonna slide the bodice pieces out of the way, and we're just gonna be working with our sleeve pieces. So I'm doing the long statement sleeve. I think it'll be a really great contrast to the crop version. So that's what we're gonna start with. The very first thing you wanna do is to draw your guidelines. So if you open up your pattern, you will see all kinds of lines. If you're projecting, the lines will be on the projector. But we've got the short sleeve line, we've got the adjustment line if you need to add length or remove length. But do just remember, the sleeve is supposed to be kind of an oversized, billowy statement sleeve, okay? So unless you're doing the short sleeve. So there is extra length added in for the bunching. You're going to have a 3/4 of a sleeve cut line. You're gonna have your guideline here for the first line, and then you'll have your second guideline here. So you're just gonna have 2 guidelines if you're doing the long sleeve, and just 1 guideline if you're doing the 3/4 length sleeve. I'm doing the long sleeve, so I'll have 2. So I have already finished the top edge of my sleeve and the bottom hem edge, just because that's a step we're gonna need to do anyway, so I like to have it already prepared. I did one, so I can show you already. So on this one here, I drew the lines on the wrong side, because for this one, I'm doing the elastic. Okay, so wrong side is where the guidelines go for elastic, right side is where they go if you're doing shearing, okay? So I have my first line here, and you can see it in my blue marker, hopefully. It is kind of hard to see. And then my second line is right here. And I'm gonna show you how you would draw those lines. Okay, so you're gonna open up your sleeve. Remember, we want to be on the wrong side. So for me, I marked my right side with a clip when I was cutting it out, just because it looks pretty much the same front and back. There's not hardly any difference. So I marked that so that I would know and kind of keep the look the same as I'm sewing. So you're gonna turn it over, and it takes up the entire table here. Okay, so then you're going to place your pattern on top to kind of see where your lines are going to be. Now what I did was I actually folded my pattern up at this line like that, so that I can just put the ruler across that. I'm going to line up the arm side, the top and the edge here. I'm going to slide it up because I need more space, but you line that up. And then I like to put pattern weights on that, like that, just so that everything stays in place and it's not shifting around. Woven fabric is very shifty, so I suggest that you really work diligently to prevent it from warping or shifting while you're doing this process. Okay, now you take a ruler or a straight edge of some kind. Okay, I just want to make sure this is straight. Kind of take a look at your fabric and make sure it's all straight. We don't want it to be wrong. Okay, so then you take your ruler there, and you're just going to draw a line. You can use fabric pens. You can use chalk. I have both. Chalk does stand up on this fabric, but it does tend to like pull as I'm going across. The marker does also, but not quite as bad as the chalk. So because of that, I kind of just go back and forth in these short little marking, like I'm just kind of going back and forth across it. Just right up along that ruler or your pattern edge if you don't have a ruler out, just like that. Okay, and when you move that, it should be a nice line right there. Hopefully you can see that it's right there. Okay. Then I like to do both sides at once. I did one, like I did the bottom line all the way on the bodice, and then I, you know, did the top line all the way, and I found that it's easier if you just keep your pattern piece kind of on one side for now. So you're gonna fold again at the next line. Okay, so it's already folded like this. Okay, this is where my next shearing line is. So I'm gonna put it back on the fabric, just like I did before. And I'm gonna put some pattern weights on. Grab my ruler, still fine. It's kind of a weird bubbly fabric, so yours should lay nicer, hopefully, depending on what you chose. I want to get some beautiful rayon challis because that flows so nicely. I have already cut all of the rayon challis I have for the Leonie wrap tops because I just love them so much. But I do think that would look really lovely in this pattern. Okay, so now that you have that line drawn, you can flip it over to the other side. I'm just gonna flip it to the other side, just like this. You're gonna be finding your top edge again. I also kind of look at this line that I drew so I can make sure that I have everything as it should be. The pattern weights are handy because sometimes when you put the ruler down, it shifts everything. And like I said, with woven fabric being so shifty, it's just handy to keep it steady. And then I kind of just like to line up my ruler a little past. And then if I need to adjust the pattern piece at all, I do that so that the line will extend correctly. So now we're going to open that piece back up to that next fold line, arrange it on your pattern, your fabric again. And like I said, kind of line it up with that line. I'm gonna move this forward a little. Okay, and then finish that line. Don't forget to put the lid on your marker. They dry out. Now you should have two parallel lines across your fabric on the wrong side for this method. I have already transferred the lines to my bodice pieces on the wrong side and to both sleeves now. So, okay, we're gonna put our sleeve away for just a second. You can put your pattern piece away. We are going to grab our bodice piece. What you wanna do now is go, if you haven't done it yet, you want to finish this edge. You can do that with a zigzag stitch, you can do it with a serger like I've done, or you can even use pinking shears. That way your threads on the inside aren't going to fray like when you're wearing it and during laundering, so that's an important step. So do that, and then we are going to have it at the wrong side. We're gonna press down 1 inch all across the top here, and you are going to then measure down a 1/2 inch, and you're going to sew a straight line. You don't need to leave any kind of opening. I'm going to sew again and just edge stitch along the edge. So this is going to create our casing, but it's going to leave a 1/2 inch at the top here to be like a ruffle. When it's gathered up, it'll have a nice ruffled look. Okay, so we're going to go do that, and then we'll be back for the next step. I'm going to be using a heat safe ruler. I got this one at Amazon, I think. I'll drop a link below, but it's great because you can press right onto it. So it has all kinds of measurements. I'm going to use my 1 inch measurement. I'm pressing to the wrong side, so I just fold this over to the 1 inch mark there. And then you just press. Like I said, you go right on top of the ruler. So when you go to your sewing machine, you're going to remember to measure down a 1/2 inch. So you'll sew right here all the way across. And then you're going to edge stitch here all the way across, okay? And that's going to create our elastic casing. You'll do that for both pieces. Take your elastic for the neckline and give it a good stretch. I do that before I cut the elastic and then after, because as you wear, your elastic is going to stretch out. So stretching it before will ensure that you get a good base to start with when you're first doing your project. You want to get a safety pin or a bodkin, and you just want to clip through the end like that. This is 1/2 inch elastic. And then you're just going to go in one end of your neck casing. You want to make sure you get your elastic in. You don't want it to twist. So we want to make sure that as we go through, it kind of stays like this. See, as we go. You don't want to pull it out when you're going through. You don't want to pull it out the other end. So I'm carefully going through because it's a pain to have to try to fish it out or pull it all the way through and do it again. So just take your time, and then when you get toward the end, you want to go make a few basting stitches right here. You don't want to sew it fully because you might need to adjust your elastic when you're trying on your garment. So we're just going to run a few stitches. I'll keep it secure. Now we're just going to keep pulling the elastic through. It should kind of start to gather as you're doing this. Right. And the more you pull it, the more it evenly distributes these gathers. And you can see how it's starting to create that neck ruffle that I told you about. It's really cute, huh? Okay, and then you're just going to remove the safety pin and go add a few basting stitches. Okay, now you just want to repeat that step for the other bodice. Now you should have your bodice front and back with your finished neckline. So remember, we have our elastic basted, so if we do need to make any adjustments, we can. I kind of just put it up to my body to see. And right now it's probably a little too wide, but there is seam allowance. So I'm gonna wait until I make any adjustments. So you wanna find your wrong side and then flip so that your fabric is right side up with one piece. And then make sure that your wrong side will be facing you for the next piece, because we want right sides together. We're going to align the side seams. And we just want to make sure that our casing lines match up. So you can kind of fold and look to find them. And then, once you know they are, you just pin or clip all the way down. We're gonna repeat that for the other side. Just like that. So if you're making the shirring option, then your bodice will already be gathered up like this. But because we're doing our elastic for this version, we're actually going to want to go all the way around with it, because we're going to measure our waist. We want to make sure that we use our waist measurement minus 2 inches to get our elastic just right. So go sew with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance down each side seam to secure, and then we'll move to the next step. So our finished seam should look like this on the inside. So I sewed it with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, I pressed it open, and then I went to my serger and I finished both edges of the seam, so it looks really nice. You can alternatively use a zigzag stitch, or you can even use pinking shears if you like. And this again is just to prevent the inside seams from fraying during wear and laundering. All right, okay, so now we can move on to the elastic part. So you want to use a 1/4 inch elastic. I like braided elastic. I feel like it stretches really well and it's kind of nice to work with. This is a 1/2 inch, so you can see it easier, but it just has a nice stretch. So here's my 1/4 of an inch. And again, I'm kind of stretching this before I cut it because I want to just really make sure I get some good stretch out of my elastic and some good wear. And if you pre-stretch it, then that eliminates some stretching later. Okay, so we want to get a tape measure. You want to have a tight fitting tank top, cami, or just your bra and panties when you're doing your measurements, because any kind of clothing is going to add width and bulk, and we want to get a really good measurement. So use a tape measure that isn't stretched out and that still has an accurate measurement. You can always check it against a ruler if you need to ensure that it hasn't stretched out. You are going to go at your natural waist. Your natural waist is where you bend like a teapot in the song. So if you were to remember that I'm a Little Teapot song and you put your little teapot out and you bend, that's where your true waist is. Okay, so it's really at the innermost part of your waist. Okay, so we're going to just keep that nice and horizontal right in the bend area, the true waist area, and then don't suck in because you want it to be comfortable. So get your true waist. It just should like fit nicely. It should be snug but not tight, and that's the measurement you want. So for me, it's 29.5 today. That should fluctuate throughout the month. So just know that it might be a little snug one day, maybe a little bit looser. That's okay. It's not you. It's just the way that our bodies are. So I'm going to take that 29.5 and I'm going to subtract 2 inches. So that takes me down to 27.5 inches. All right. So I'm going to measure that out. So that's 17. So now I need 10 more. And I'm not stretching the elastic. Now, you want to divide this elastic piece into 4 even sections. You can use a calculator if you need. I just like to bend it in half, make a mark, and kind of repeat that process. You can use a marker, you can use a pin, whatever works for you. Do both sides because sometimes I'm not sure, you know, which way it's gonna go on until I get going. All right, and then you can find the next one by bending one edge to this line you just made. Now you're doing the 1/4. All right, and repeat that for the other side. Bend the side up to that middle line. All right, and then this will be your other quarter. So now that we have our elastic quartered, we can put away our ruler, and for the front line, we want to use half. Okay, so we would pin or one edge here, pin the half mark at the other side, and then the quarter mark will go in the center of your front or back bodice, okay? And then you're gonna repeat that for the other side. Okay, and then you can find the center of your bodice. Might have been easier if I had marked that first, like marked the center of my bodice first. I'm just gonna mark it with a marker. Mark so that I know where it is. I guess I should do it for the back too. And then you want to match up this mark with the mark I just made. To make it easier, you might want to like continue to quarter and pin across. It's just up to you. Right, we're going to take this over here and just add it in right there. And then find that center mark again, line it up with this center mark. Okay. So you can go ahead and put the second elastic on if you wanted, but I think it's probably best to do one at a time, just so that you get good accuracy. As we go and sew, we are going to put our needle in and do a stitch to secure. Then we're going to stretch our elastic and our fabric straight, just like this. And we're going to use a zigzag stitch, and we're going to go all the way across straight. When you get to your next pin, you can leave your needle down in the fabric to secure it, and then remove the pin, and then adjust your fabric straight again, and then continue stretching. So I would take your time, go slow. This doesn't need to be a fast process. That way it will hopefully turn out in a nice straight line. That I think is the most tricky part of the elastic method, is that getting a straight line can sometimes be tricky. Make sure you are continuing to stretch and align your elastic with the lines that you already drew. So those are your guidelines for having a nice straight look. Otherwise, when you put it on, it might look kind of wonky. If one elastic is kind of going this way and another this way, it just won't have the same look. So that is my advice. All right, let's go do this. You can gently hold the other end of your elastic and just kind of guide it through, just because when you're pulling this way, sometimes it doesn't want to easily go through. So sometimes I kind of hold both. I'm sort of just stretching the elastic away from itself, but I'm not pulling the fabric through. So I'm still just letting the machine do its thing, but I'm just kind of guiding with my other hand. first row should look like that. Now we'll go to the next row. All right, your bodice should look like this. It has 2 rows if you did the crop version. If you did the shirt version, you can have either 3 rows using lines 1, 3, and 5. You can have 4 rows using lines 1, 2, 4, or you can have 5 rows using all 5 lines. So the crop just has 2 lines, and so that's why there's only 2 rows on this bodice. Okay, so we are going to set that aside and we're going to work on the sleeves. What we want to do before we do our elastic through our sleeve is we want to press down the top of our sleeve, and we are going to use 5/8 of an inch for that. Then you're going to go to your sewing machine and you're just going to edge stitch right along your finished edge here. You want to have finished your edge with a serger, with a zigzag stitch, or you can also use pinking shears. Stitch across to secure. We're creating our casing, and then we are going to cut 2 pieces of 10-inch long elastic using our 1/2 inch elastic for that, and then we're going to adjust it after we try it on. So we're going to do this just like the neckline, where we just baste the ends of the elastic. This will allow us to be able to go ahead and take those stitches out if we need and adjust and make it, you know, fit our bodies properly. Because our bodies are all different, and the best part about sewing is that you can make something that fits your body perfectly. So that's how we're gonna do this, just like before with the neckline, except for we're not actually making a ruffle at this sleeve. So we're actually just stitching 1 row of stitches using this edge here. And then we will insert our elastic, baste the ends, and then we can move to the elastic through the center. While you're pressing, you might want to go ahead and press up your hem. I have pressed it up, so you press it up 3/8 of an inch and then fold it up again and press again. This is going to create our hem at the bottom. We're not sewing it yet, we're just creating a memory hem so that when we sew the sides, they'll fold up together. Okay, just makes hemming a little bit easier. So let's go do that. Your sleeve will look like this when you're done, and we're just going to repeat that for the next sleeve. One thing I noticed is that here's this sewn with just the casing, okay? Just along the edge. There's no stitches up here, it's just the casing. When you put the elastic in, this is kind of the look you get. Now, mind you, my fabric has embroidery on it, so it looks a little bit more bubbly than maybe yours might. But I almost think to make it look just even a little bit more professional, before you insert your elastic, you could edge stitch right along this edge, like just at that very edge, because when you put your elastic in, then it's going to keep it really nice and might look even just a little crisper. Now, I'm not going to do that because I already did this one and I don't want them to look different, so I'm just going to move forward. But just a tip for next time if that's a preference for you. Give it a few stretches, make sure your elastic isn't twisted, because that'll also look really unprofessional. And then once you have it nicely, just go baste. Okay. We have both of our shoulder elastics at least basted in place now. So it's coming along. I'm getting really excited to see it together. I tried on the bodice and it's really cute. Plus, I just think that color is really lovely. I can't wait to see what you're making. I love seeing all of your makes posted in our Facebook group or Instagram or wherever it is you share. I just love seeing everything you make because you all are so creative. I would say something that always surprises me is maybe some of the hacks you do or the different ideas you all come up with when you're making these patterns. And you just have such amazing ideas and everything turns out looking so lovely in the end. So good job. Please keep sharing because I love it. And all right, let's move to the next step. We will be putting in our sleeve elastic. Okay, so for the sleeve, if you are doing elastic, we are going to need to make a casing because the elastic for your wrist and for your upper arm is too narrow to do the method where we pin and stretch and zigzag stitch, okay? Because there's just no way. So we're gonna make a casing for this option. Now, If you like the casing method, you're welcome to do it on the bodice as well. You would need to add 3/8 of an inch for every casing line, and you could do it in the same way I'm going to show you. I transferred my shearing lines to the wrong side of my pattern, okay? And this is the blue line. I'm showing you what it's going to look like because I'm going to show you everything you need to do, but this is what it will look like. So here's what the casing is going to end up looking like. This is the wrong side. From the right side, it pretty much looks the same, okay? So what we are going to do to achieve this is to, okay, so from the right side, you're going to take your fabric and fold it towards itself. So you're pressing right sides together, and you're going to just press right on that line you drew. You're just going to make a press. Okay, that's actually going to make a nice press line on the wrong side, which is what we're going for. Then, with it opened back up on the wrong side, you'll see this pressed edge, okay? Here's my pressed edge. If I take it out, you can see there's a pressed edge right here, okay? Then you're going to fold that up 3/8 of an inch and then pin it all the way across. And this is just going to secure it. I used my ruler that it can be pressed against so that it would make it easy to measure as I was pressing, that I was making sure I was getting the 3/8 of an inch casing. And then I just pinned. So from the front, the casing will look like that when it's not stitched. And you will just sew from the back first, and you're going to just sew right down this edge, just right along the edge. Then you're going to flip it over, and there'll be stitches here now, and you're going to just stitch right along this edge all the way across, okay? And that's going to give you this finished casing. And then we're going to take our elastic with a smaller safety pin, and then we'll just insert it into the casing. Right. Now, as you do this, what you are going to do is when you get to the end, when this is at this end here, I want you to make some basting stitches because we are really going to be pulling on this elastic. And so without those stitches, I don't think you'll be able to, or it might want to rip out. Okay, so when it's like that, I want you to baste it right there, okay? Now, I'm not gonna finish that right now because we really need to focus on the casings really quick so that we can finish our crop top and then do our shearing version. So let's go to the ironing board. So that's not very pretty, but this is where I'm going to iron. So I pre-pressed this one line just so that you could see how it should be. So it was this way, right side up, folded on itself, and I just pressed across that seam like that. Okay, then I flipped back to the wrong side, and you can see that that seam kind of sticks up a little. Okay, you're going to use that to your advantage. So I have this ruler that I can use to press against. Again, you can get it at Amazon, Waywack. They probably sell them lots of places, but it specifically has different measurements. It's very helpful. So my 3/8 is this teeny line right there, and I'm just gonna be pressing up to it. So I'm gonna put my edge kind of against where this is wanting to fold up, and I'm just going to fold over so that I'm right at my 3/8 of an inch marking, and then I'm gonna press. Now, this ruler gets really hot, so I don't know how many times during this process I've been saying, ow! So try to not handle it at least immediately after you press, and just carefully in general, because it stays hot for a while, so. Ouch. You're gonna do this all the way across, and we're gonna secure it. I like to do it from the wrong side. because that's where I'm sewing first. Be careful not to move your fabric much during this process because you want to be sure you are getting that casing just like it should be. And this method is okay, but I think I prefer the shearing method. So I think if you are avoiding the shearing method because you haven't done it before, I would say give it a go because you will be so surprised how easy it is to shear. It removes all of these steps and all you have to do is draw the line and then sew on it. So it's so much quicker and easier, and to be honest, I feel like it's more comfortable than elastic. All right, so remember we want to fold, turn it back right side, like right side out, okay, and then we're gonna fold from the right side to the right side, right, until we see this line here that we drew, and then you can just kind of like keep bringing it down or up until you get right on that fold like that. And then we just want to secure that line. You just keep adjusting your fabric so that you get a nice crisp press at that line only and not anywhere else. Okay. All right, now we're gonna go back to the wrong side. And again, you see this bit sticking up here, which is what we want. And we are going to find our 3/8 of an inch here. You might be like, hey, why are you starting in the middle? And I would say, because I think it's easier. I don't know if that's true. It just feels easier to me. So if going from the edge across is easier for you, go for it. It's really not going to change anything. You're just needing to make this casing even all the way across, and that's the important part. Okay, now we're gonna pin again. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do is go and we're going to sew across the top lines on the wrong side. Then we're gonna flip it over and we'll have lines there now above these folded lines. And then we're gonna stitch right along the edge of the folds, okay? And that is gonna make your casings. And then we can insert our elastic and then move on to getting this finished. All right, we're getting close. Okay, now your two casings should be done. Let's put in our elastic. Okay, so we have our casings. This is the one that already has the elastic in it, so I'm just gonna kind of keep working on this. My fabric, because it has this embroidery, is a little tricky. I'm hoping it works out. Ouch. Sometimes when you are doing this, your safety pin can come undone. And what you have to do is kind of feel around and re-secure it, but it is tricky and sometimes it gets stuck, which is a big pain. Can't really tell if mine has gotten stuck. I think it did. All right. You want to measure your wrist for your elastic, but the elastic has to stretch so far and gather so much fabric with this that it's good to add about 1 inch on both ends, just so that you can pull it through, overlap, stitch it closed. It's easier to get rid of too much elastic than it is to not have enough. So cut it a little bit longer than your measurement, both at your wrist and at your upper arm. So once you get it more close to the edge, that's when you want to put a few basting stitches in, because you don't want to pull it all the way through. So here we are right at the edge. It just about got me. So I'm gonna go put some basting stitches in right there to secure it. All right, now I know that's not going anywhere. So we are going to just keep pulling this across. Well, that is the wrist elastic, and I was putting it up higher. So I've got to seam rip out these basting stitches so that I can switch casings. I was thinking, oh, do the top first because that'll be easier. Not if you use the wrong elastic, it won't be. Note to self. You'd think after sewing as long as I have, you wouldn't make mistakes, but no, still do. All right, I'm almost there, sorry. Anyway, seam rip that out and then just pull your elastic back out. All right, and then just put it back in the... Okay, let's try again. All right, I'm gonna go baste that. Okay, so as you can see, this really stretched the elastic. Personally, I still really like the other method of shearing over this, just because it's easier and I feel like it's gonna lay better. This started to twist in here, so now I'm trying to twist all the same direction. So that's so fun. Anyways, I will fix that, but that is what your sleeve will look like right in this area. Okay, and then we're gonna do the same thing at the top here, and then when you sew it, it'll be like that. Okay, so secure the ends. Do not let go, because I'm sure it's stretched very tightly. Can measure your upper arm, and remember I said leave about 1 inch extra, and then cut another to match it. Okay, I've got my other side over there. I'm nervous to try the safety pin again because it did bend a little. It might be best to get a new one, but I'll give it a go and see. So it's about 1 inch left. I'm gonna baste there, just so that it's not overly big on my upper arm. I added more for that. Remember to pull a little bit more than even, just because of the extra that we cut. Okay, just like that. So we want to make sure we've had our memory hem pressed up. We did that in a previous step, but if you haven't done it yet, now's the time. 3/8 and another 3/8 press. And then we are going to take our sleeve piece and fold it right sides together. We're going to match up our armpit. We're gonna match up our casing marks and then our hem. You might have to pull some of all of this bulk away and into the center for just a little bit, so you can really get to your edge of your seam there. So kind of pull it straight. Then just line up the edges. Okay, and then we're just going to pin evenly between. Now we're just gonna go and sew with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance down the sleeve side, and you'll repeat that for your other sleeve. Make sure that you line up your casings as you go and your hem, okay? Your sleeve, right side out, should look like that. I press the seam, I use my my ironing ham to press it, and it fit right inside this sleeve really nicely. So if you want to hem it now, you could. You can also do it at the very end and do it all at the same time. Up to you. But, okay, and then we're going to take our sleeve and insert it inside the bodice so that we align our side seams. Side seam of the sleeve, side seam of the bodice, right sides together. Okay, and we're going to clip it like that. Okay, and then you're going to move your gathers kind of away so that your seam is smooth. This one, and just align it, and one more here. Okay, do the same the other part of the arm side. Gathers, clip. Okay, now using a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, we're gonna sew along the arm side. We're going to press open that seam, finish the edges with a serger, a zigzag stitch, pinking shears, whatever your method has been, and then we can turn it right side out. It's gonna be really exciting. We will use a thread and use a needle to thread the ends of our serger threads tails through, and just thread it back through, so that way we don't have weird threads sticking out of our garment. But yeah, it's gonna look good. So let's get that done, and we're getting close. Okay, so your seam will look like that. And from the right side, it'll look like that. Isn't that cute? So what we need to do before we finish the seam is we need to try it on. So you want to wait until you have both, you want to put both sleeves on, you want to try it on, make adjustments, and then we will do this like the professional finishing at the edges here, and hem. So I am just going to put this aside for a moment so I can show you how the shirring sleeve should go. Okay, for the shirring option, I want to show you what this is gonna look like. So I started this yesterday just to practice and to see how my fabric was gonna do, and I can still show you how to do it on the other piece. But so what we are going for is 3 rows of shirring. Stretch it like that, see? Per line. On your guidelines on your bodice, you have 5 lines. You can make a choice. You can either do all the lines, you can do lines 1, 3, and 5, which is what I've chosen to do, or you can even do lines 1, 2, 3, and 4. It's totally up to you how you want this to fit and look, and it's also kind of based on your inspiration. If you see something in the store that you're wanting to make, you might look at how it's made and then kind of make your determination based on what you want the garment to look like in the end. Because the different rows and different spacing sort of gives a different look, which is kind of fun because then you can mix it up on different garments using the same pattern. If you are using lines 1, 3, and 5, you're going to do 3 rows of shirring per line. If you are using 4 or 5 lines, you're going to do 2 rows of shirring per line, okay? But we're just going to draw the lines based this way, because you're going to shear at the first line you drew right across it, and then you're going to just line up the edge of your presser foot and then just sew across it, and then use the edge of your presser foot against that stitched line to sew across again. And that's going to give you these even gathers. It's just so pretty, isn't it? This is kind of like a satiny, really drapey fabric. I really love it, so I'm hoping this turns out nice. I did use a Microtex needle for this fabric just because I wasn't sure if a universal needle would be best. So make sure that you're choosing your needle based on the type of fabric you're using. That's important. I have the 2 bottom rows here sewn, but the top one still is just the first row, okay? So ideally, you're gonna start at the top and just make your way down. You're not gonna like have rows that are at the bottom already, but I was just playing around with this. So you will use this line here, this top line, and put it against your presser foot and then sew again. And I'm gonna do that here in just a bit, but I'm gonna show you how to mark your pattern first. Also, we are going to be putting the markings on the right side because we're gonna sew on the right side. That way our elastic right here, the shirring elastic, will be on the wrong side. Okay, we don't want that on the front, it's not very pretty. So you wanna make sure that the thread you're using matches your fabric. That way it'll look nice and I mean, unless you really want it to contrast, I guess it's just kind of up to you, but you will be seeing the thread color on the front. The first thing that we can do is make our lines. So get your bodice with it right side up like this. This fabric is shifty. Do you see that? Like if I have it just like this and I think it's straight, you can see that it's not. Okay, so it is important to make sure that your fabric is straight across the top and the bottom. So I highly recommend using pattern weights during this process because the markers or the chalk, they kind of pull the fabric. It's hard to prevent. So you just have to take your time and be kind of careful, really make sure your pattern piece is secured well. If you're using a projector, that's fine too, but you'll just need to make sure that you're holding your fabric really well with weights or something while you draw your lines across. All right, we're gonna be using lines 1, 3, and 5. As you can see, I folded on line 5 already. I've also folded on line 3. And then it's like that. And then I fold it again on line 1. And then it's like that. And we're just gonna use this as a guide to make our lines. So I was gonna start at the longest line and move up. You're going to place your piece just like this on the fabric like we did with the sleeve. Okay, and you're gonna put your pattern weights on. We don't want it moving, okay? And then you can get your ruler, place it down, try not to shift any of your other fabric. And then I kind of like to put my pattern weights on that after I've done that. You could use more weights if you want. Sometimes I have like random things sitting around that's heavy and I'll utilize that. Okay, then you can use a marking pen, you can use chalk, whatever you want. I think I'm gonna use a marker. And like I said, I kind of hold the fabric with my thumb while I'm pressing on the ruler, and then I'm just kind of lightly pulling this across. And I do kind of go back and forth with the marker, but I'm just trying not to shift this fabric too much because it is just really shifty. And just like before, I'm gonna do all my lines on one side and then go to the other side, okay? The next thing we're gonna do is wind our bobbins. So I know that shirring is scary for a lot of people because they just simply don't know how to do it, but it's really not hard. So you're just going to have elastic thread. It's a little thicker than thread, but it's pretty thin and it's just really stretchy. Okay, I got this whole spool at wawak.com and you can get it on Amazon as well. They also sell it in bulk. So just pick where you want to get it from. I think you could probably find it at some local retailers as well that sew sewing supplies. To wind our bobbins, we do not want to use our sewing machine to do this. The reason for that is that it would wind the elastic too tight. So we don't want to be stretching it much while we're putting it through. So put one end. We want to put our bobbin thread through the bobbin hole like this. And then we're just gonna hand wind it. So I hold this end against the side with my fingers. And then with the other hand, I am going to wrap it around this bobbin. I'm not gonna stretch it. Ooh, careful, you'll pull it out. I'm not gonna be stretching it. I'm gonna be keeping it taut. By taut, I mean this is taut, this is stretching, okay? So taut, and just wrap it around. You don't want it really loose, like this. It won't work right. And we don't want it really tight, like this, because it won't work right, okay? So we just wanna kinda keep it just a sweet spot of just a little bit of tension while you're going around. And don't worry that you're gonna pull too tight or not enough, it'll all be fine. You're just kind of letting this elastic sort of slide through your fingers with a little bit of tension that you're adding as it goes between your fingers. And I tend to do one, like hold it this way and go one way, and then I will actually switch fingers and go the other way. Not go the other way around, but like hold it the other way, because sometimes it'll build up all on one side. And I just like it to be even. It wouldn't really probably affect it that much, but. Okay, so I don't know if you noticed, but I also pulled off some slack. It's better if you're not pulling it against your spool. If it's just free flowing, you're gonna have a better tension pull, than it might start to stretch otherwise, okay? So I can let go of this end now because it's not gonna unravel. And what I meant by changing directions is I'm gonna hold it on the other side now and just kind of keep my fingers out of the way. And then I'm gonna still wrap in the same direction, but I am just filling it up from the other way. You probably wanna wrap about 3 or 4 of these, because running out is frustrating. The reason that my bodice I was practicing on isn't finished is because all of that took one full bobbin. So, and that's just one side. So I can kind of guess that it's gonna take a bobbin per side, and then I have, and then if you're doing the long sleeves, you'll also have that to use. So you don't want to get it too thick. You don't want it to be coming off the bobbin. So this is about right, where there's just a little bit of edge of the bobbin left, and you can just cut it like with a long string, and you can trim away this edge and then just put it aside while you do the next one. Now that I have 3 bobbins hand wound, we are going to go to the sewing machine, and we are going to use each line we drew as our guideline, our first line. I'm gonna start at the top line and work my way down. You could probably start at the bottom and work your way up. I just wouldn't suggest starting in the middle. So on this first line, you're gonna sew across. I'm going to use a tension of 7, and I'm gonna use a stitch width of 4. That way I can it's just gonna look nice for this process. And your fabric should kind of start to gather as you're sewing. That's okay, that's what it's supposed to do, but it should stretch back out without any resistance. So if your fabric doesn't stretch back out, you've probably wound your bobbin too tight, or something's wrong with your tension. So you might have to do some troubleshooting if you're experiencing something like that. If it doesn't gather at all, again, something is not quite right. So go ahead and make this first line, and I'll show you how to do that. And then we're just gonna put our presser foot along, like right at the edge of this stitch line, and we're gonna pull our fabric straight out, because if we try to do the next line gathered, like with it gathered, it's just gonna make it, you're almost like you're sewing over those gathers, so now you're making it even smaller. So we don't wanna do that. We're gonna stretch it out straight, and we're gonna sew another row. And then we're gonna do another row. So we'll have 3 rows at each of these guidelines. And it sounds complicated, but it's really not too hard. So let's do it. So you're gonna take your bobbin, and you're gonna put it into your bobbin case. We are going to follow the directions of your bobbin case, like with how the thread should go. But if you have a cutter like I do, you're just going to avoid that. So you're gonna get it in, make sure it's in the tension dial, but you don't need it to go to the cutting part. Okay, so just trim that away. push that in, and then you're just gonna put your needle down and up. Sometimes this can be tricky, so if you can't get it to pull out without some more tension on your above thread, you can secure it up here somehow and then use both hands. I've done that before if needed. Okay, tension is going to 7 and my stitch width is going to 4. All right, start at my top line. Gonna make sure I'm on the right side, and I'm gonna sew right down the middle of this mark I made. Okay. And as you can see, it's starting to gather back here, but I can pull it and it's okay. Now I'm not going to use my trimmer because I actually want there to be some thread left out here, so I'm just going to trim like that. And then the top thread really doesn't matter, but you want to have kind of a tail when you start the next row, okay? And so here's what your serge or your elastic looks like, your shirring looks like. And I would say it could use a little bit to be a little bit more snug, but you can fix that with a good steam. So I'm just going to keep going for now, and if I need to adjust after all the rows, I'll do that, but sometimes it will sort of work itself out as you add more rows. So you just line it up right against that stitch with the edge of my machine or my presser foot here. I'm just going to leave it right there, and the whole time I sew I'm going to pull straight and then sew and then pull straight and then sew, so that my lines stay really nice and straight. So then you have your second row, and as you can see, it's kind of getting a little bit more gathered the more you add more rows, and it stretches well, so it's all going smoothly. Okay, we're just gonna go put it against this one more time. Actually, I'm gonna go this way. I'm gonna try to keep going the same direction, or you're gonna, it'll get wonky. Okay, so I'm gonna line that up just like that, like I did last time. Okay, and then you just pull. Okay, so your first line should look like that. You should have all these nice stitch lines. Doesn't that look great? Okay, now you're going to do the remaining 2 lines in the same way that you did that. And then we will go to the next step and do it for the back of the bodice. Okay, so I've got my shirred bodices here. They have their 3 rows of stitches per lines 1, 3, and 5. I have finished the neckline just like on our elastic version. So as you can see, this one I did stitches right along the edge here. So I edge stitched across the edge after I pressed it 1 inch to the wrong side. Then I measured down a 1/2 inch and I stitched across again. And then I edge stitched right along the edge of our serged edge there. So this gives me a really nice look, and I think it's looking really good. So we have our bodices pretty much ready to go. We are going to put them right sides together, and we are going to clip at the armpit, clip at the hem, that. And then you want to just match up your casings. This fabric is slippery, so I gotta be extra careful to line it up right. Then if you need to make any adjustments, do it now, and then do the other side. This pattern was designed by Lakeisha Webb on our team. She does all the photo tutorial images and writing, so can give her a big shout out for the easy instruction. I think it has turned out so good. Can't wait to show you how it looks finished. Let's go sew down 3/8 of an inch seam allowance both sides. Then we'll finish the edges just like we have been. I'm gonna serge mine. You can zigzag stitch or pinking shears, and then we can work on the sleeve. All right, so this is what your seam looks like. And we just turn it to the right side like this. And now we're ready for the sleeve for our shirred version. I am doing the short sleeve, so I will show you how to do that. So your sleeve, sorry, sometimes it gets messy. All right, so your sleeve should look like that. All right, we're going to go flip our sleeve to the wrong side, and we're gonna press down 5/8 of an inch. Okay, I am once again going to edge stitch, just like I did here, right along that edge, and then again stitch just right along the edge as well, okay? And that's gonna create my sleeve casing. You're gonna do that for both pieces, and then while we're over there, we're actually gonna also fold up our hem and press it at a 1 inch seam or hem allowance and stitch across the very edge, just like we're doing at the top, that crisp edge. Then measure up a 1/2 inch, stitch a line, and then edge stitch right along your finished seam here. Okay, so it's just like we did this, but we're actually gonna do it on the hem. So we're going to just press right now. We're not sewing anything because we're actually going to sew all that after we have the sleeve sewn in a loop. So we're just gonna press right now. After your sleeve's pressed, that's what it will look like. We want to fold over your sleeve so that right sides are touching like that. Clip in place. And then we're gonna sew that with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay. Now, when we are done with that, we are going to refold this bottom hem here, like this. And I'm gonna edge stitch, like I said, around the edge there. Then measure up a 1/2 inch, sew a complete row. Then we are going to sew right along this finished edge. You need to leave about a 2 inch gap somewhere toward the side seam so that you can insert your elastic when you are finishing along the edge of your finished edge, okay? Because that's actually where we're putting our elastic that will go around our arm, all right? Do that for both. Forget to finish your seam and then also press it open. Let's just trim away these edges like that. Now we're gonna press it back up along that fold that we had. If you remember, already should be good to go. And you're just going to edge stitch now. I usually like to do that from the front. I don't know if that's best with this one or not. I'm gonna try it. You can see I'm right along the edge. And every time I move my fabric, I wanna make sure that I'm maintaining this 1 inch fold. My sleeve's not caught up in it. Now we're gonna sew our neckline, which is 1/2 an inch up from where we just sewed. Okay, now I turn it over and from the wrong side, so I'm sure I catch the edge, I'm gonna edge stitch I'll probably start right before my seam so I can leave my opening right there. Get your sleeve out of the way, kind of have to maneuver this. Leave my opening here. I'm going to back stitch really well. And then go ahead and now you have your casing to insert your elastic. So in the same way, you can get the elastic that you measured from around your bicep. Put our safety pin through the end. When it gets here, you need to do something to secure your elastic so it doesn't pull all the way through as you are going through. All right, try not to twist it. Grab your ends, overlap them. You can pull out more, that you have more flexibility, and we want to sew with an overlapped about a 1/2 inch and sew it to secure it. You can use a zigzag stitch, you can use a straight stitch, whatever you like. Give it a good stretch, that'll pull it in. And then while you have your elastic in, we want to go close this opening we left. So just put your needle back in line with your previous stitches. Okay, and then just want to close the opening, and there you have it. Inside of the right side looks like that now. Super cute. Okay, repeat for the other, and we can move on. Okay, for the top, I am going to sew right along this edge like I mentioned before, and we did just a second ago. Okay, and then from the wrong side, we're going to sew right along that edge there. Okay. All right, when you have that done, turn your bodice wrong side out. And then with your sleeve right side out, we want to insert the sleeve into the bodice, matching sleeves at the side seam and sleeve inseam, and clip. Your pieces should be right sides together. Okay, if you want to trim some of these threads off, you can. Okay, and then you're going to just match up like this at the edge. Just in case it's not confusing, your elastic for your sleeve is at the edge of your neck ruffle, and your elastic for your neck is a little further down, but you're just edge to edge. Okay, and then you're just gonna clip in between. Okay, and repeat for the other side. Okay, and now we're going to go sew the arm side with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Finish your seams in your chosen method, press the seam open, and then we'll be ready for the next step. Your sleeve should look like that. And you can now do the other, try it on, make adjustments to your elastic if needed, and then we'll finish our seams and press it open. To finish the hem, we want to press up 3/8 of an inch and then press up another 3/8 of an inch, and then you'll just top stitch. You can do it from the front or the back. I usually do it from the front, but this time I'm going to do it from the back because this fabric is really slippery and I don't want it to get all bubbly, but that's just my preference. For this shirt, if you're doing the crop top, it is designed to have elastic right here in the bottom. I kind of like it open, but what we will do is press up 5/8 of an inch, and then we will just do a little edge stitch along there, and then we will insert elastic. So it's going to be just like we did here, 1/2 inch elastic like this. So if you want, you could go ahead and at that edge do an edge stitch like we did for the top, or like for the shirt version that we sheared. But if you want to keep it kind of consistent, you could leave it like that. I actually don't want elastic in the bottom of mine, so I am going to leave mine like a little flutter shirt down here. So I'm actually just going to hem it by pressing up probably a 1/2 inch and then stitching around. Okay, but the normal way to do it would be to follow the instructions like I mentioned, just like we did for the sleeve, and you'll do it around the hem. This is the crop. What do you think? I love it. So I would say if you put the elastic in, you're just gonna have, you know, it's just gonna be more like this at the bottom, which would still be cute, but I like those little flounce there. Okay, this is showing it off the shoulder, which I think is so cute. I'm trying to show you all of it in this little screen. So the reason why you don't finish the arm size edges is so that you can adjust if needed. So I would say even wearing it off the shoulder, it's a tad loose. So what you want to do is you can put it on inside out, and then you can kind of like pin easier. You won't, well, here, I'll show you. Put it on inside out, and now you have access to all your seams. Okay, so if you want to wear it like this all the time, and you know, this is how you're planning to wear it, that's fine. What you would want to do is go ahead and adjust the elastic for just that. If you plan to wear this on your shoulder like this, you can see I have some gaping right here because there's some that I can pinch out. So really what I want to do is just clip evenly over here. Okay, this one kind of, move your hair out of the way, adjust your gathers, and then once you have it the way you like it, check the back. Might take a little on both sides. You know, I can still pull this over the shoulder and it's fine, and it feels a little more secure, but it's gonna cover my bra straps and stay if I make this adjustment. So all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to my machine. I'm just gonna sew just to the inside of this clip, and then I'm gonna just like slowly grade back into the current line that I stitched on the front and back. I'm not gonna take quite as much on the back, but I am gonna take a little bit. Okay, so that's how you can do that. You can do that for your whole bodice if you want. If it's too big somewhere, you can just pin down the seams and take out what you don't need. Okay, so that's a really fantastic way. Then let's put on the other one. Different fabric, so it sits a little different, it acts a little different. It's the short sleeve, but again, you can kind of see it doesn't quite want to cover my bra straps because it just needs just a smidge of an adjustment. So I'm just going to make the same adjustment that I made on that one. Okay, this is what it looks like. It's very cute. You can still wear it off shoulder if you want, and just kind of gotta adjust the sleeve a little, which is really cute too. I tend to like just to leave them up, but I think I might wear that crop off shoulder. It's really cute. Okay, so we can do that, and then you're going to press your seam toward your sleeve after you've adjusted, and you're going to tack it right along the edge just to keep it laying nice and flat. You can do that front and back. All right.
Hi everyone, it's Lakeisha. Today I'll be popping into the video with Lindsay to show you all how to construct the Midi version of the Shantelle. So for starters, you are already going to have your dress constructed. So remember, with the dress bodice, that the main dress portion's already attached to it. So you should already be to this point with Lindsay, and I'm not going to go through all of that. It's just going to be for attaching your skirt tiers to the bottom. And it doesn't matter which sleeve or whether you did the shirring or the elastic. As long as you have the dress, you're ready to go. Okay, so now we are ready for construction. As I mentioned, if you are sewing the Midi version, you will have 2 middle skirts and 3 bottom skirts. And what I like to do is go ahead and fold that fabric right sides together so that I can find the center. And I like to mark when I'm gathering. I like to use this kind of a marker and just mark that center point. I've already done it at the top. I'm also going to do it here at the bottom because we will have another tier to attach to this. So you want to make sure you have your center marked on both. And I'm just going to do the same thing on both skirts. So I just put a little dot there. I've already done this one. If your fabric is directional, so meaning you have a top and a bottom, my print is not, you want to make sure that you somehow or another mark it in a way that you know what's the top and what's the bottom, so that in the next steps you're not confused. So now that you have that marked, you are going to go ahead and take both skirts and you're going to put them right sides together, and you're going to actually do this on both seams. So I will start here. I like to do the top and bottom, and then sometimes kind of ease, depending on your type of fabric. If you cut slightly off grain, sometimes there's a little easing needed. That's pretty normal. So you see, it's kind of hard to show in this video, but I'm just grabbing that other side now, and I'm gonna match right sides together in the same way. And I just do top, bottom. Oh, see, I'm already making a mistake. Top and bottom. And then once you've done that, you can ease the rest together, or sometimes it's, perfect. But okay, and once you have both sides of your skirt, your middle tier, right sides together, you're going to go ahead and sew this with a 3/8 seam. Sew this with a 3/8 seam. And then the next step, we will press the seams open and finish them. Now both seams are sewn with a 3/8 inch seam allowance, and now we are going to press them and then press them open and finish the raw edges. I get asked, or I see it posted in the group sometimes, about why not finish the edges before you sew them. And that can be acceptable in certain instances, but for a lot of seams and a lot of fabrics, when you serge before you construct, the fabric can distort or stretch out. So it's especially important in necklines, shoulder seams, things like that. You want to finish after you have already constructed, so that that line doesn't grow. In this instance, I guess you might be able to get away with it with just doing, if you wanted to finish first, but I recommend this method. So I press the seam first, and then I press it open. And then when it's pressed open, it's very easy to just go serge one side at a time. And I'm not going to show you at the serger, but I'll explain. You're just going to take one side, and I just grab that one side of the seam, and then I serge that first, and then I flip it, and then I grab that other side of the seam, and then I serge that. So just make sure you press both of your side seams in the same way. Press flat first, and then press open. Pressing flat sets your stitches, and then pressing open, like I said, gives you that, it makes it easier to finish. So once you've done this, you go ahead, you take it to the serger, finish the raw edges, or go zigzag them, or use pinking shears, whatever your finishing method is. Do that, and then we will come back for the next step. Okay, I'm back. Finished those raw edges. And then I like to press one more time. I press a lot while I'm sewing. Press that, and then press the other. Okay, once you have that pressed again, you want to find your top if you have a top, or if you don't, then just choose one of your edges. Remember to make sure you have your center marking. So again, I have it marked at the top and the bottom. If you have a front or back, you also want to go ahead and figure that out, make sure that's marked. We are going to take that top edge and we're going to run 2 rows of gathering stitches around the entirety of the top. My preferred method for gathering is to sew. Right now we're going to be using a 3/8 inch seam allowance to attach this skirt to the bodice. So what I like to do is do one gathering row that will be 1/4 inch from the top, and then another one that will be 1/2 inch from the top. And so that way we kind of have one in the middle of the seam allowance and then one outside the seam allowance. And that's really the way I gather all the time. It's one in the seam allowance, one outside. So I'm gonna do, and I do one row, or the 2 rows on only the front skirt, and then the 2 rows on only the back skirt. It's really up to you. Some people like to just do a whole, do the whole skirt. I find it's easier to distribute and make sure you have them a little more even, and reduce, the threads breaking during the gathering process if I do the front skirt and the back skirt separately. So I'm gonna go do that 1/4 inch from the top, 1/2 inch from the top, 2 rows on the front, 2 rows on the back, and then I will be back and we will continue on with the construction. Okay, the gathering stitches are sewn in. You'll see I have the 2 rows. There's one that's 1/2 inch from the top, one that's 1/4 inch from the top, and it's the longest stitch length of your machine, and for my machine is a 5, so that's how I sew mine. And what I like to do at this point, before gathering, even though we've already marked our center point, you also, I think it's a really good idea to go ahead and add a clip there, because sometimes once you start gathering, it's kind of hard to find your points again. So I go ahead and just add a clip to them also. So you see my blue marker from earlier, and I'm literally just adding a clip. And at this point, it would be a good idea as well, if you have a front or a back, depending on how you chose to, cut your fabric, and if it matches to your bodice in a certain way, go ahead and mark that. I don't have a front or back, so it is okay now to go ahead and start gathering. The way that I like to gather, you'll see also how I mentioned I do separate rows. So this is my side seam, and then you see that I have 2 rows here. I like to use a different color thread, so that's really easy to find my bobbin. So my 2 bobbin threads are here to this skirt, so I'm just going to go ahead and start pulling on them a little bit. And what that'll do is start gathering up that skirt, and I just like to gather a pretty good amount before I work on the bodice, because I feel like it's really easy to just spread your gathers back out once you have gathered them up. So we're now really close to that middle point again. So then I'll drop this side and I'll go do the same thing from the other seam. I'm just gonna find my green threads that I used for my bobbin, and then just do the same thing. You're just pulling them with one hand, and then, you kind of slide the fabric. So we're gonna do that until I get close to my center seam. And again, Right now, we're not worried about any measurement, anything. We're just kind of gathering that up a little bit. So you can see that front is considerably shorter right now. And I'm gonna go do the same thing on the back or the other skirt. Like I said, I don't have a specific front or back. I'm just gonna find those gathering stitches again and then do the same thing toward that center. And I have to be a little careful with my fabric because you see it's starting to kind of fray a little. So that's something to take into consideration. If your fabric frays a lot, and make sure you're being gentle in this step because there's so much friction. And then last one, we're gonna do the same exact thing. It starts getting, this is why I really recommend using a different color thread because you see there's, you know, so much going on over here. It's really easy to just find your bobbin threads when they are a different color. Just grabbing that and then gathering up that last bit. Okay, and that's about all I'm gonna do for now because I'm going to release some of these, which what I mean by releasing is just spreading it back out a bit. So for now, this is how I'm gonna leave it. And we are going to, you can leave this skirt wrong side out how you have it because we're gonna take the bodice. The bodice is gonna be right side out. And you wanna mark also the front and back center of your hem. So your side seams will match to the side seams of the skirt. So all you need to worry about is the front and back center. And on this, I don't, it's not a super big deal if you use marker because this seam won't be gathered. I use marker on gathered seams because obviously you can't gather with the clips or your pins still on there. So I'm just gonna use a clip. And I'm just matching up that side seam and then keeping the bodice smooth until I find the center. And at this point, you can decide if, you know, when you attach this, is there a front or a back, if that matters to you. So I'm gonna do that real quick. Okay, I am back and I have decided that for my fabric, I would like a specific skirt attached to the front and back. So if you decide that, make sure you mark it in some way. And I always use green clips for the front and red clips for the back. So that's what I've done. So now you want to make sure your dress is right side out. And right now you're looking at the top, the hem. So the neckline is this way. We're looking at the hem of the dress bodice, and then this is the skirt with the gathered edge. You are going to put it right sides together, and if you have a front or a back, make sure you match that front or back point. And I really like, even though I use clips a lot, I really love pins with gathering. I feel like I can get much smoother, neater gathers when I use pins instead of clips. So for starters, you're just gonna do that center point, then do your side seams. And the side seams are literally just the side seam of the bodice and the side seam of the skirt. And I have a lot going on right here. I know, I am aware. But once everything is sewn and constructed, I'll get rid of all that. But you don't wanna prematurely cut anything because you still need to adjust the gathers to fit. Because right now, they're a little too gathered, which is okay. You see, actually this might be decent, but I want to smooth them out. You see, they're not even. There's none here, a bunch here. So we're going to fix that. But for right now, we're just focusing on getting those 4 points matched. So this is the other side seam now. And so pin or clip that. And then my back or other skirt, however you want to word it. So right now we're just going to start with those first 4. Once you have those first 4, it's easy to see what you need to fix. So if you needed to tighten, because it, you know, right now you can see there's more bodice than there is skirt. So that just means I need to loosen these a little. So you can just gently loosen until it fits. And then you also want to make sure you work on evening out those gathers, because right now there's a bunch of gathers kind of bunched up in one area. You just really want to take your time on this step, and this will help you get a very nice looking finished garment. This usually takes me the longest because gathers can be tricky. And you just take your time and just pin that little section in place. Okay, so I now have one section of one of the skirts done. So now I'm just gonna go back to that center mark and then do the other half of that same skirt in the exact same way. It's just evening out your gathers, making sure they fit into that portion of the skirt. If you need to adjust because it's too loose, you just pull on the bobbin threads to tighten. If you find while you are adjusting that your gathered section is actually too loose, you can just pull on the bobbin threads again. You just go find them and then you can pull on them and tighten that up a little bit. But for mine, everything's good, but that does happen sometimes. Okay, this is what I mean about this step takes a considerable amount of time. You just really, I think this is an important part to not try and rush through just so it looks really nice. So I have my whole front skirt, or maybe it was my back. It's my front, green clip. I have my entire front skirt pinned in, nice and neat. So now it's literally flipping over and then repeating the same exact process on the one half of the back skirt and then the other half. And once you do that, you are going to go to your sewing machine, sew with a 3/8 inch seam allowance, which will be kind of down the middle of your gathering marks, your gathering stitches. And then once you sew that on, you can go ahead and finish the seam. So I take it to my sewing machine, sew with the sewing machine, and then I go serge and finish those raw edges. So we will be back once that step is done. So I actually forgot to tell you, once you sew, it's also, so I've already sewn with my 3/8 seam, my gathering. It's a really good idea before you finish to go ahead and take out those basting stitches, because it's much harder to take them out once you've already finished the seam, because oftentimes you're sewing the stitches of the gathering gets caught inside of your regular stitches, and then you can pop the stitches, or just really hard. So this is another good case for a different color. It's much easier to identify them and remove them. And you're just pulling them out. I'm pulling 2 at a time, so it's what you're hearing. And now I have those all pulled. So that is one, I don't know, the front or the back. And then I'm gonna go find the other 2 and then do the same thing. And this, it's all tangled, but it's okay. As long as you can pull them out. And then once you do all of your finishing, I'm just gonna pull all this, pull. If you just look on the right side, you'll see you should have a other thread should be on the right side, unless it fell off, which happens sometimes. So I'll need to trim all of this because it got caught on the wrong side, but it's okay. Yeah, if you have stitches, they'll be on the outside, and if not, don't worry about it. But yes, now you can go finish that gathered edge. Okay, my raw edges are now finished, and you can make sure if you have any of those weird like bits that are hanging out to the right side like I do, you just go ahead and remove those. I caution on pulling them in case it's like any part of your fabric that would possibly fray if you pull too much. So I just like to use my scissors that way. I don't cut, I just use the blade of it to kind of, I don't know, it kind of just shaves it off. And you can also do this later. It's really just, sometimes when you have a fabric like this that's fraying a lot, it gets kind of stuck on the right side, and so yeah, your gathers look nice and neat and even, and then you want to go ahead and press that seam. When you're pressing gathers, a lot of people avoid that. You just use the tip of the iron. You're not pressing super hard, you're not pressing a lot, you're really just pressing that seam. So I literally just keep the iron right there on the seam. I'm not going in on the gathers, just right on the seam. You're gonna do that all the way around. And then the next step would be to mark. We already have, remember we marked that, the bottom of our seam. I marked it with a marker earlier, I just found it. So now I'm gonna add the clip to it. And remember, if you have a front or a back, make sure you are following through with that. So this is my front, so I need a green clip instead. And then we're gonna do the same thing on the bottom of the back of the skirt, which is here. It's my back, so I'm gonna use a red clip. And this will now be the piece that we attach the bottom skirt to. So what you're going to do is sew those 3 bottom skirts right sides together all over again, just like we did with this, but instead of having 2, you will have 3. So we're going to right sides together each one until it forms a loop. We're going to sew that with a 3/8 inch seam allowance, press the seam allowances open, finish those seam edges again while they're spread open, and then sew the 2 gathering stitches in the exact same way. I will do all of those steps, and then we will be back to attach again those gathers. So that gathered edge will now attach to the bottom of your middle tier. All right, so I have my 3 bottom tiers. I've got 1 here and then 2 here. I'm gonna go ahead and mark the middle. I kind of did it with the pin as I was cutting. So that middle, and then we will do the same thing on the other 2. So let's do the top. Middle. And then last one, mark the middle. And now once we have all 3 of those marked, the middle, I'm gonna go ahead and take 2 of them. Make sure if you have a top or a bottom, your top or your bottom is matching. And for my purposes, I'm just gonna use my mark will be my top. Gonna be right sides together, pin or clip that side seam. And then we're going to, now we have these 2, instead of just doing these 2 right sides together like we did the last time, we have a 3rd one that's gonna join us. So you're gonna take the edge of one of those. Make sure, again, if you have a top or a bottom, you're matching, and I'm using my marks as my top. So there's my center mark again. And then we're going to take that edge of the first two that are already together, and we're going to join that. Right sides together at the side seam. Now once you have that one joined, it has a loose end. It's going to go to the other end of that, the first two you put together. So you're just going to have all three pieces together in a loop. Once you have all of those together, you're going to go sew it in the same way. Each one of these seams will be a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Press flat, press open, finish the raw edges. And then once you have done that, the next step will be to sew 2 rows of gathering stitches. Now what I like to do after I'm done, I like to open it up and figure out what is my center front, what is my center back, what's going to be my sides. Once I have those marked, which sometimes, usually for 3 skirts, it's not going to end up being the points we marked. So the points we marked might be, we might not use them, we will see. But let's go ahead and sew this, and then we'll come back and discuss how we're going to gather. Okay, for the bottom skirt, because there are 3 tiers, the way that I recommend finding the matching points is to take one of the seams, make it your center back. When you open up the skirt to where you're trying to find the center point, you will make that point your center front. So your center front and center back. Center back is a seam, center front is the opposite of that when you open the whole loop. And then match those two to find your, I guess, your quarter points, your others. They will match to your side seams. So it will not be a seam matching to a seam. It will just be a point that you've marked on the skirt to match to the side seams of the bodice. So center front, center back, and then your 2 side seams. And I'm actually going to transfer that mark in marker like I like to do. And then go ahead and sew your 2 rows of stitches. I make this my side, I treat this like my side seam. And so I will sew 2 rows from here to here across the front, and then 2 rows from here to here across the back to have my 2 rows again. And then you will just gather that up, attach it to the bottom of the middle tier. So we'll do this and then we'll come back. So we are now at the point where we can get ready to attach that bottom skirt to the top skirt, and or the middle, I think it's the middle skirt, middle tier. I have already marked the front, center front, and the center back of that bottom skirt, or sorry, middle tier. And if you remember, the same way we attached earlier, the bodice is down here. You're looking at the skirt hem or the bottom of that middle tier. You are going to take that skirt, which you have pulled your bobbin threads to start gathering it up like we did for the first skirt. You're going to find your center front, center back, and side seams. And so I use green for front, I use red for back, and then I use yellow for side seams, which, remember, the side seams are not actually seams on the skirt. They are the points you marked when you divided that skirt into 4 equal parts. You are going to attach it exactly the way you did the first time. So you want that skirt to be flipped so that it's right sides, so that you can put right sides together. Remember, there's a lot of thread stuff going on, but once you attach everything and sew it, it's really easy to clean up. So don't worry about that. We're just going to match that center front, match the bodice side seam, which, let's find it, or the skirt that's attached to the bodice, that side seam will match to your side marking from your bottom skirt. And then you're going to do your center back. the center back of the skirt that's right now attached to the bodice to that center back seam on that bottom skirt. And then the other side seam of the other side of the skirt that is attached to the bodice right now is going to go to your last marking, which is that side point from the skirt. I don't have a pin over here, so we'll make do. Then you're just going to adjust all of these gathers exactly the same way you did for that first skirt. You're just going to spread them out if you need to, or tighten them back up by pulling on the bobbin threads to make them fit. And you are going to do that until your skirt neatly fits and attaches to this. So we'll start here. Just and you just want to keep going until you can get it to start fitting within there. And then just pin or clip in place. I moved my pins, so now I'm switching back to clips, but pinning or clipping is fine. And I think I need to take that off for a second because I can't adjust right now. Okay. Let those out. This is why it's good to mark with a marker or something, because I took that clip off, but I could still find my place because I marked it with marker. And just like you did earlier, just take your time on this step. There's no rush. Make sure you're able to get it nice and neat and pretty even for the best look. And you just do the same thing for all your sections. And then once you're done with all of the sections, you're going to take it to the sewing machine. Sew with that 3/8 inch seam allowance. Remove that basting stitch or the 2 rows of basting stitches. And then you want to go finish the raw edges with a serger zigzag or pinking shears. I really recommend the serger or the zigzag for all of these gathers. So I made a little boo-boo. I prefer to work from the center toward the edge of the gathering, so the side seam in this instance, or the side marking, because that way you can release the gathers as you move. If you work toward the center, you see what happened is I had way too many gathers in the middle, and so I couldn't fit it. I kind of accidentally worked in the wrong direction, so just course correcting. I just have to go back toward the side seam and just spread the gathers out a little more. I think we're almost getting there. So now that's good. We can go work from, so this is our side seam. So let's go work from that center marking. Is this our, yeah, I think that's our center back. So we'll just go work from there out toward the side seam. Okay, now that we have all that gathered skirt pinned in place, we're going to go ahead and sew it with the sewing machine 3/8 of an inch. Once we do that, remove the basting stitches, and then you're going to finish that entire raw edge. I will come back after I have sewn and finished, and then I will show you what the finished product looks like.
I hope you've had so much fun sewing this with me. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.